Welcome, everybody, to week 7 of our Web Development for Beginners course. In this week, we're going to do a deep dive into React State. It's a very, very important concept. We've covered some of it throughout this journey so far, but this time we're going to look at it further and how we can become basically better React developers by managing state in the proper ways. Right after this quick intro. Welcome back, everyone. I picked in the audience where everyone is sort of joining from and what their React experience is. I'm going to say today's like, it's going to be a bit of intro, a bit of intermediate as well. We're going to get a little deeper into what we call React State. So maybe this is the first time you've heard of React State. And this might be, whoa, okay, what's going on kind of thing. But hopefully, this will be still a gentle intermediate session. So let's see who's joining us now. We got Falcon Fire. I love the name. From Middleton. So no experience with React. So welcome. This is going to be an introduction and both a next level steps as well. So you'll be at least an expert, or hopefully someone not an expert, but at least well enough on React State. Jim, good day from Philly. Well, good day to you do as well, Jim. Yushi from Sheffield, UK. Hello. Attended almost all of them. That's nice. Hopefully, and these all are recorded, so you don't have to attend live to say that you attended all of them. You could watch one after and say that you've been to all of them. That's cool. Yeah, Jim, nice music. That music gets me going every time. I don't know about you, Jim, but a little jing jingle is really gets the old web development hands flowing, if you will. Cool. So this is week 7. So again, if this is your first time joining, you're like, week 7 of what? Well, this is a web development for beginners course. It's been 8 weeks. So sadly, what that means is our time together is almost up, at least as far as doing this live. I mean, these videos, again, will be online on our YouTube channel forever, until YouTube dies or the channel dies. I don't know which one happened first, but these will be always available for you to watch. So even if you're not watching live, even if you're watching this years from now, say hello. Hopefully the world is still a great place to be. But today we're going to talk about React State and what that really means. And again, if this is your first time, I always do. This will be the last time I'm going to do an intro to the course, because next time it'll be week 8, and then hey, the course is basically done. So there's no point doing an intro, I guess. But I always say I'm going to do these faster every week. So for this week, I'm going to try to get to I don't know, 45 seconds, maybe not. I think maybe that's a little too fast. We'll see. Cool. We always do 3 things we do about this course. We do this week's topic, a little bit of intro there, and then I never do, but I always say I'm going to do next steps. But next steps really is just what's available for you. We're going to talk about some of the resources that you have after this session, in terms of learning with others, and learning more yourself. So another thing I always say is there's no stress. I'm going to talk about a few different resources, share some different links. Again, if this is your first time joining as well, and again, this is your first time joining as well, you might ask, okay, how can I look at the other weeks? Well, all of that is on this page. I just put it in the chat. I have it here on the screen as well. So it has week 1 through 6 and week 7, actually. So week 1 through 7, all available to you, all the resources that I've shared, as well as some other things that we're going to talk about right now. That's a kind of a part of the package of this course. And the package is a couple of things. So one, like I said, it's an 8-week course. Week 1, we did some basics about programming tools and resources, setting up your VS Code environment, some of the extensions I like to use as front-end development that might be good for you. Week 2, we covered JavaScript, just vanilla JavaScript, not React. Some of the data types, what is a function, what are methods, what are the differences there. Then in week 3, we did this thing called making decisions in JavaScript, which was really about kind of adding logic to your applications, doing like if statements, loops, ternary operators, all of these sorts of things, all in week 3. So if you know those things or want review, go ahead and check out week 3. Week 4, I put together some interesting concepts just to make sense of it all. Arrays, loops, and APIs. So we worked with the API. So we made an API request to a Pokemon API to get Pokemon information. So if you're a big Pokemon fan, do check that one out. And we then used arrays and loops to find that information to show it to the user, which is kind of really important for actually when we want to use the data from APIs. And then we started doing the introductions to React. So week 5, again, if this is your first time seeing React, maybe some of this stuff will be completely new. I'll be as gentle as possible here. But week 5 was doing the introduction to React. So do check that out if you haven't seen any React code before. Then week 6, we did last week, we did working with data. So I pulled in 3 different ways we can work with data. The API, which I mentioned, but also user input, right? So sometimes we do things, we have text boxes, we have input fields, things like that to get information from our user, which is data, right? And we want to use that in maybe in other parts of our application. We also built something around that. And then the other option was working with a database. So just to kind of show you quickly what generally how databases work in terms of you need some sort of connection string, and then you get that information and how then to process it and show it in your React application. And today, week 7 is going to be talking about understanding React state. I mentioned in the quick intro, we already kind of covered or shown some of the React state before. We've done like it's almost not necessarily impossible, but it's really hard to do React code without doing React state in certain cases. But now we're going to dive deeper into React state. And then events are going to kind of be tied to that. So if I said week 7 is going to be how to become a better React developer. And then week 8, which is going to be talking about Tailwind and CSS, design-wise, I guess, is going to be how to become a fancy React developer. So if you want to become a better React developer, this is your week. And if you want to become a fancy React developer, next week's your week as well. And hopefully you want to become a good, fancy React developer. Like I said, again, all the links there, I'll put it in there because inevitably someone will join like maybe in like 2 or 3 minutes from now and ask me if this is going to be recorded or where can I find the other weeks because maybe they join later or whatnot. I see a few people joining now, more people joining. So again, that's where you're going to find all the resources and links that we're going to talk about in today's lesson, as well as all of the links and resources from the prior lessons. So and yes, this is going to be recorded. It goes to YouTube quite quickly after this is done. So feel free to, then you can pause, rewind, put me in 2x so I can talk really, 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 really fast. All of that, but doing YouTube. But this is how we've been doing it so far. We've been doing continued learning. So each week there's a Microsoft Learn lesson. So it's a completely free resource to find and build on your knowledge that you are doing. Because most of the time you're just watching me, but now you can actually do things, which is the best way to learn. And then also we have been building together. So if I go in here, let's see if my Mac wants to play nicely. So yeah, we had this matchmakers page here. So this is on the tech communities, Microsoft. We have this kind of forum, and lots of you, which has been super nice to see, have posted your details here to find other learners. So I think learning in a group is the best way to do, or finding just one person to keep you motivated. Because when we did week 1, we had a lot of people that were restarters, right? They tried to learn web development and then they've maybe fallen off the wagon a little bit. And now they want to keep going, and using this course is a good resource to do that. But one of the best ways to do it is to find other people who are learning. You can build things together, you can motivate each other, come to understanding, ask them questions as well, helping other learners and stuff like that. So I made this forum, web developers, beginners, learners, matchmaking. You can post things like your name, your experience level. So again, to make the matching way better, a location and time zone. So again, you don't want to have someone maybe like, 9 hours ahead of you, 9 hours behind. It's kind of tricky to meet or talk to each other. It's not impossible, of course. And then where can you find you? A lot of people have posted LinkedIn. So hello, the new joiners here. Let's see. I think it was like so Augustine joined, Ken, cool. Felicia from Wisconsin, nice. Ahmed. So it's a global community, right? I mean, I can't think of 2 different places like Wisconsin and India being completely different, but all joining here, trying to learn web development, which is kind of a cool thing to see from my side as well. Cool. Sorry for going through all my desktops, but then we have this other compete together. So we have this 8-week challenge. It's called a Cloud Skill Challenge, and it's basically taking all of the lessons that we're having all these 8 weeks and basically putting them in a one little package so you can compete against each other. Basically, just being able to one motivate you to get all these 8 done. And I know you might say, if this is your first week, oh, week 7, this might be really hard for me to do. But truth be told, some people in this course have completed all weeks in like the first week that we did this course. So props to them. So it's definitely possible, especially now that you have basically 2 weeks to do it. I definitely think it's possible. So don't say, oh, I can't do this challenge because of that. So it's at that link there. But again, all the links and the resources are in that main link that I shared with you as well. And I have this leaderboard, and these are all the people who have completed the course, so all 100%. I'm really excited to see that we've completed. We have one slide that has all full 100%. Last week we had a few like 87.5, which is like one lesson left, which it's just one lesson. Like, you can do it. But now we have this whole complete page of 100%. But not only that, we're on page 2 now. We're on page 2. And yeah, maybe I could put Lizette here at the bottom, but that's not fun, right? So we're on page 2, and I imagine hopefully by the end of this week 8, we will have at least more people accompanying Lizette here on that. So that's super cool. Cool. And I see a couple of people joining already. No experience with React, but just want to join from Manchester. Nice. Cool. And Abdul from there, London, first time here. Welcome. So I just covered everything, but if you had questions or anything like that around this course, all of those links are going to be right there on that page. So do check out that. That's going to give you the best resource for everything I just covered here. Cool. But now let's get into the business. Get into whether I don't know how quick that was, but now we're going to cover React State. And a little bit, since this is sometimes some people's first times, we're going to talk a bit about what React State is. But it's, I think, probably one of the most important concepts, if I want to take a big opinion here, of learning React. So if you're first time learning React, or if you are trying to get better at React, mastering React State is a good idea. I'm going to pull the audience here. And just ask, if anybody, I know we usually have a few people who are good at answering things quite quickly. What is React State? What is state, or what is React State? I'm going to give a chance for somebody to just answer in the audience. This is going to be like the quiz for all, and giving you all the points of there, because I don't think I'll have like any other big trivia questions. But if you could like write what React State is in like, I don't know, 10 words or less, 15 words or less, I don't know, something. So anyone who has claimed that they have done React should know at least something about that. Let's see. I gotta move my things here. Okay, cool. Let's see. No one's gonna take the shot. Jim, you're so active. Jim, what do you think React State is? While we wait. Good shout out to Phantom. Did all 8 in a week? I think Jim is saying you did all 8. I'm not sure. 1 week. Cool. So Darush says the data, which is partly true. That's a good point. It does deal with some of the data there. And I'm gonna butcher your name. I'm really sorry if I messed this up. Yusoshi. Built-in React object, so used to contain data or information. That's a really good one as well. And then I love always somebody comes with some where state is the current version of the component, and event handlers are the way JavaScript handles input users. So all I think is pretty good. Gonna look at state is something that holds information about your React app at a particular point in time. So these are all hitting on the points that I want to handle here as well. So state is like many people said, like it's the information or the data that's in a component. But I like to say that state is really about how to handle or understand the current status of your component. And again, if this is your first time hearing components before, React code is around building components, little Lego blocks, as we call them, in your application. There's pieces of your application that you want to make. And each of those components can have a state or multiple states. So different data or things change within your application. And we used to have to do things where we had to manage the whole life cycle of the component, for example. But now we have this state where we can basically define variables, so state variables, and then change them over time based on what's going on in an application. And basically, what goes on in an application is a couple of things. Users use your application. Maybe your application is getting data from an external source, like an API. So this changes the state, or we need to change the state to address that. And then we have event handlers that can also help out with that because users have input where they click things, they enter, submit, they do all these other things, and they have events in our application, which we can respond to and change the state. So that's state. Hope that was somewhat clear, but you're going to see a lot of this today in today's world, today's lesson, because we're going to cover state quite in depth. But why do we even care about state? Because again, like why would I dedicate a whole week to this instead of like, I mean, we've seen some state code before, like we put a state, we use state when we want to update things, but like why is it important here? Well, if you think of like any application that you're having there, I'm going to give this example of like a voting application, so hopefully you can read this. We have to do a couple of things, right? Like let's say we want to do voting app, and we want to add the vote to like someone who votes in something. Now we need to add the vote to the total vote count. That's one thing we have to do. So that's like one state, the vote count. We need to update that when someone votes. Maybe we also want to like add the voting history for a user. So let's say, when we see a user profile, we can say this person has voted for yes in this case, 5 in this poll, no in that poll, right? All of these things we can like keep that somewhere, and we need to update that then, right? If we want someone to vote, then let's say we want to show the results of voting during when the voting is done or during their votes. So that's also a vote count that we have to keep updating, right? All of these things. We want to keep the page of all votes, maybe current and previous, so you can see results from archive votes, things like that. And then lastly, maybe we also want to like be really nice feature and have like a way where if you voted for something, you get a notification when the voting is done, what the voting results is. And maybe we want to incorporate that into an API or whatnot to, give people, the knowledge that something happens. Well, this is all great, right? React can do all this stuff pretty well. But when we use state, and if we don't use it well enough, basically we get these things, Anybody know what these are? And I don't mean specifically what these are. So obviously you must know. Somebody can give me an answer what this is. And I don't mean the type of what this is, but this is, I'll see someone will write in the chat, but this is bugs, right? And when you begin web development, you probably don't have many necessarily bugs. You have Fact and Fire. You're on fire. Look at that. Boom. Cool. So we have these bugs, right? And normally it's because we have bugs. When we start out, we don't have maybe bugs. We have errors. These things just don't work. But with bugs, we have things where we expect things to work. The code is working, but it doesn't actually work the way we expect it to happen. So in this case, like, right, we have all of these things we need to update. Voting history, page, current results, things like that. But maybe some of these things don't work the way that we expect them to, or they don't work at all, but they work in a sense, like we don't get any errors in our code. But hey, we got these bugs because they're not really what the user expects, or not what we expect as a developer. So we need to, one of the leading causes of bugs in the React code basically is through state, not managing in the proper ways, because things update, things change, things get restored, they get deleted. And if you don't manage your state properly, then the information, the data, like everyone answered, what's really important with state, that gets changed, right? And then we have a huge problem. And finding those errors is tricky. It takes a lot of time, even if you have the powers of ChatGPT behind you. This still takes time to debug. So we need to find ways to manage state better. So I took some of this from the React Dev documentation, which was recently released. Really great resources for that, for learning React. And I put that also in the link page. What link page you mean? This link page? This one right here. And the first one we're going to talk about is handling inputs. Exactly. And again, inputs, it could be anything, like we have these forms, we have UI elements, and we want to take information from the user. And then that means whenever the information is used, gets from the user. Then we need to update things. We need to update maybe a view, another component that maybe has like the labels, or we want to show something new to the user. We want to send that data to the like form, for example, into a database or whatnot. Things get updated, right? And then we want to confirm, right? Yes, you've sent things to, um, you've sent things to the database or whatever. It's been successful. So we need to take inputs of these things, and we need to design our UI in a way that's either declarative or imperative. And I'm going to take this quote from the React developer docs. I really like it. But React in front of development or React specifically, is the intersection of design and computer science, which is really cool to think of. And the reason of that is because we need to understand how our UIs are designed and how they function in a way that our React code, which is state, which is a very computer science idea or concept, the state of things, uh, aligns with that in a way that works better for developers, better for users as well. So if we talk about imperative, basically what that means, and I like this example from the React dev as well, is that we have to tell each element what to do and when to do it. And if we didn't have React, this is kind of the default way of what we were doing in front end development. Basically, if we need to show something, hide something, we had to tell each element of the on the page, okay, this is a new, we weren't calling it state, but new thing that has happened on the page, and now we need to go ahead and go in and show what is going on in terms of, okay, show this, hide this, don't show that. If this is true, then show that. So this is quite different to that. Cool. I just saw a question. Sorry, I'm like, my thing's not auto scrolling, so I'm not seeing all your comments. So what is the difference between a bug? I think I think you might have had error is handling so that the end user has an idea of what's causing the problem, whilst bugs are not. Yeah. So bug is also, error, you can code in errors, your code, but they don't show anything, right? Like your like page isn't loading or whatnot. So you get errors in your code. Bugs, you might actually have the page loading, might be working, but it's not necessarily showing the right information or things like that. So that's oh yeah, I think you nailed it, right? Bug, your code is working but not working as expected. That's chef's kiss. So back to this imperative imperative and declarative. So imperative, we have to tell each element to do something. So this is kind of typical in some code examples. Well, we had this handle form submit. So this form submit being somewhere submitting a form. And okay, we want to disable the text area, so we don't have the text shown. For example, we don't want to have this button shown until someone's actually completed something there. And then we want to show the hide loading marriage, hide the error message, and then we put this try catch that allows us to say, okay, if there's some text coming in there, okay, show the success message and hide the form, right? Because they've already submitted something. And this is, we have to handle everything here basically to do that. And that gets really, really tricky when we have more complex UI. And again, the UI, the user interface, React excels at making better UI experiences and better ways to develop things. So we need to find a way to design this in a better way so that we don't have to code this all of the time. And state allows us to do that. I might sneeze through this whole thing. Just 1 second. Okay, we'll see. So declarative is another way to do this. And this is kind of the React way that's suggested. And that's where we tell basically our application or our code what we want the end state to look like or to be like. And then we have the React essentially update the elements as expected, or do the hard work. And the analogy was which was great in the React dev documentation again, is in imperative, you basically have to, if you want to like, oh, drive me to this location, yeah, take a right here, go left right here, then at the next light, take a left and then stop at the blue house. Declarative is basically if you get into a cab or a taxi, you just tell them the address, and then they sort that out. I mean, maybe they don't, if they're not good taxi drivers or whatever, they can't find it. You do have to give them all the details, but in general, right, you basically just give them in the world of Google Maps and stuff like that, you don't have to give very specific directions. And what does that actually look like? Well, or how can we do this in the best way? Well, we need to first understand the different stages of your application. So in each application, there's a chance where you are, the user clicks on a button. Okay, then we need to load. We need to make a loading screen, right, just to show that we're doing some thinking or whatnot. And then we need to have a success page that says, okay, you whatever we're trying to do, this task is done. And then what gets the user to the next stage? Like, okay, they need to fill out the form, and then let's say we enable the submit button because we don't want to have any blank submissions or something like that. So filling out the form is the way to get the user to the next stage. The next stage being where you can submit something to the company or whatnot. And then how do we save these different stages? And that's always going to be about the in state. So this is us saving the different stages essentially. So we have a stage that someone's typing something. We have a stage where someone's completed something, and then we have a stage where someone wants to submit, and then we have another stage of that's actually submitted. So we have like three stages. That means that we need to use state to save these three stages. Now we'll talk about it later, but like, should it be that we have 3 or 4 different state variables that connect to them, or maybe we should have one, right? That's kind of the question of the best practice here, or what we're looking at. And then what are the UI elements that move the user to that, right? So exactly what we mean here is like, and we talk about event handlers is, okay, we have a submit button, we have a text box, so we need to like understand our form button or form box. How do we handle those sorts of things? And then when we click the button, that's another kind of element. These are all the elements that need to then be assigned the event handlers to work with. So I have this drawing app, and basically with this drawing app, right? If we talk about different stages, maybe like someone in the audience can tell me like what would be like a good for like if I want to draw something on an application, so like a MS Paint, like what's a good like first stage? I'll leave that and we can take it to the next levels. But like, what would be a good first stage for like a user to have? Mostly all drawing apps start with this. This I wish I had like thinking music to play for y'all while I wait for at least one answer to come in. But okay, yeah, right. Drawing app. I'm gonna make something. I'm gonna paint something. Get MS Paint or something. What is the first thing I should see? Okay. Jim says initialize everything, which is my favorite movie. Initialize everything, all things, all at once. What's that? What was the movie called? Um, a pen, Abdul says. Okay, so that's smart, right? Some tools maybe. But yes, so I got some good answers. So blank screen, or blank page. So I want to say not blank, right? But normally in the world of art, right, we don't call blank pages, right? We call them canvases, right? So basically, we yeah, everything, everywhere, all at once. Initialize it. That's what I mean. Uh, So empty canvas is basically how we want this to start, right? So canvas isn't blank, right? We still have to have something, right? We don't paint in the air. So we as a developer need to define something as a canvas. So we need to like have that as our kind of initial state. And then like to the point of the pen, as Job said, right? We need to then have a user that like they basically start drawing something and then they stop drawing, right? They do something on their computer to do this, right? We won't go into those details right now, but that's right. There's like these are different stages. Is start with nothing, allow someone to start doing something, and then something that people don't realize, but then you actually have to need to stop the drawing. Like you don't just draw infinitely. That would be an annoying paint app where like you click on once and it just never stops drawing. I've had that happen in early versions of MS Paint, but hey, that was like 1,000 years ago. So how does this connect then to what we talk about into React? Well, we have this empty canvas, which is probably our initial state, and an initial state is always going to be what we want to show the state that we want the component to render or show to the user initially. So we're probably going to start with an empty state. Then the user wants to start drawing. So we have these events that we have here where we have like mouse down, which is basically the clicking event essentially. And then we have this on mouse move. So like in moving the mouse, so they click on something, they click on the canvas. We want to move that around, move the mouse around. That's what happens. And then what's kind of not intuitive to people who've never done development before, but we also need to like then react to not only when the mouse is up, so when they unclick, but then once they've moved out of the kind of space, if you will, of what they're doing there. So that's kind of, again, like, okay, we have like 3 stages of our application, but we have a few events that we need to monitor, to look out. And I can show you some quick code example of what this looks like. Um, so I have this canvas here. We won't look at use ref, but just to give you a quick example, let me just zoom in. One click. I won't go through all of this code, but I have this state, which is like is drawing, set is drawing, which gives you a little bit hint of what we're going to talk about later on, about consolidating some of the events or bringing them together. But then I have this, I have a few events as well around, okay, we're going to start drawing, and I have basically HTML canvas. So HTML has a built-in canvas that allows us to make drawing apps. And then I have this draw event as well. But then I also have like a stop drawing. This is an event that we can also look at. And then basically I have in my canvas an assignment of these sorts of things: start drawing, stop drawing, stop drawing as well for the mouse up event. And if you could see here, they all connect to the state of is drawing. So if is drawing is true, we set when they start drawing, we set that to true, and then when they stop drawing, we set that to false. And then if it's true, right, or if it exists, then we actually start drawing the line. So this is kind of like the deepness that, as a developer, you have to kind of go to. It's not just like, oh, draw. It's, you need to react to the user's events there. And kind of the tips that they have here is really like, to kind of get this going really well, is that you should list all the possible states. So even if, like I said, we have like 3 events right now where we maybe just say, okay, is mouse down, is that's one state, is mouse up another state, is line drawing another state. Now that's three possible states. But if you could see that, like, these aren't going to be the same things at once. Like, they're not going to be, you're not going to have the mouse up and the mouse down at the same time, even if you have like 2 mice. I'm not sure if that works that way. You can experiment with it, but you wouldn't have, like, if you have one mouse in most use cases, right? You have you clicking on the mouse, you're not clicking on the mouse. So since these are exclusive to each other, public can group them, and that's what I sort of did in the is drawing, right? Is making a status of is drawing or not drawing, because these are not going to be the same things at the same time. And then we add those to the event. So that's really kind of cleaning up, reacting to user input through kind of best practices of using state. The other things that we can do, what's important, I'm going up, is this, like, we need to manage multiple state variables. And this is really around state structure, as the documentation has said as well. Because most of the time we have, we do need to have not just is drawing, but we need to have other, let's say we want to save this or something like that. We might have, like, is submitted or not submitted, like maybe have a drawing competition or something, right? So then we have this idea that really less is more. So even if you want to have multiple state variables, like in managing multiple parts of your component, you also still want to try to have as least amount as possible that are still effective, of course, right? And the best way to do that is to look at the end results of your state. So one of the kind of ideas of where to shop around for or look for is if you have like similar or like state variables that update the same thing, or similar things that will be connected, it's best to group them together. So the docs have a good example of this, right? So maybe you might want to, like, even in this example, right? Maybe I want to have like the XY coordinates of the mouse or whatnot, so I know exactly where the mouse is. And I could have this like const x and set x. So this is how you would define a state variable, and then use state 0. So nothing's changed here. And then I have set y and set y. So this is perfectly okay working code, right? There's nothing wrong with this. But in case I need to like update these sorts of things, then I would always have to find a way to like set x and set y, which is kind of redundant in my code. So again, if like, oh, now we want to move the you uploaded a photo or something into your canvas, then I need to then also always have to update the set x and set y which sometimes I can forget. In some places in my application, I don't do that, and things again won't be as expected. So instead, then we could group these sorts of things into position and set position. And then we have this object, which is X and Y. So this is a much cleaner experience because when I need to update the position, I can just call set position, and then I know that I need to update X and Y, or update only X or update only Y. So again, grouping them makes this a lot better to manage out. Then, if you also want to do like states when they disagree, and what I mean by disagree is like if they will never be the same thing at once, you also want to find ways to avoid that. So there's no room for impossible states because even though I say the word impossible, there could be a way to bug in your code where things might be the same, and then we have a problem, right? Where if we have impossible states, we need to then find a way to manage those things. So we have this thing, let's say this import. So we're importing new state, and we have these like two options: is sending, or is sent. Things will never happen where you're sending something and you're then also having something sent, right? Your email is not sending emails, like one email and then also having it in sent folder, right? It doesn't make sense. So these are always going to disagree with one another. So if that's the case, then we can probably combine these in such a way where then there can also be one state variable. And one way to do that is doing, let's say, a status instead. So we have status, set status, and then equals. So let's say we have this first, you're typing the email or typing the form, and then we can change that. So like if when you're submitting something, right, then the set status is sending. So you click on it, and then it's going to send the email, and then we're going to wait so that let's say the text comes back or when we have the text out, then the set status is sent. So again, we not only have to update one status throughout this entire life cycle of the component, and we don't need to like, oh man, I forgot to update is sent, so then it doesn't actually show the user is sent, and the user doesn't see that the message has been sent, and they're emailing our support or whatever because they're angry because they don't know their emails have been sent, right? So this is another good method, a good way to consolidate or bring grouped together different state variables. Speaking of email, I see somebody has a Crypto Uni to call you out. Had a little Outlook issue. I was waiting for you, Crypto Uni, to start, and I waited for 30 minutes. And I'm completely lying, but welcome, Crypto Uni, #1 Rust fan on the Reactor YouTube. Another thing is avoiding the same thing twice, right? Which I gotta mention. If you do the same thing twice, so let's say we have another form and we want to have like 2 or 3 state variables: the first name, last name, and then we want to say, okay, once we get the first name, last name, we actually want to use the full name for what's in our application. So this seems okay, right? Again, right, first name, last name, and then when we know we have the first name, last name, we're going to set full name to whatever those are combined. But it's really unnecessary to do these sorts of things, right? We don't need to have 3 state variables. We only need to have 2 of them if we wanted to, because what we can do is then take the first name, last name, so those still in the state again because we're having a form, for example, and then we can also then just combine them when they're done. Basically, we're taking the first name, putting a little space there because that's how names work, and the last name. So again, much cleaner way to work and code this up. And then we have the storing the same data in different states. So sometimes we have different state variables that also work with the same data. And that's also really tricky, right? Because let's say we want to update something in one state, and then we forget to update it in the other state. And one of the examples is shown is like, let's say an input field where you can also add the different names of the input, and then that it shows up on the screen. So you need to first update what's in the label of the option, and then you need to also update what's like a text area to show what's in the label. And if you forget to do one of those things, then you have a bug, right? Let's say that doesn't update in the text area. So instead, we can combine those things. So the best way to sort of combine them is if we store the data in an array in one state. So let's say, okay, options is in an array 1. and that's stored in one, like, let's say add ingredients. We're going to talk about that later on. Ingredients being like let's say a recipe application. And then we want to then, instead of storing a whole nother array that we need to update in another state variable, all we have to do is reference that by using something like the ID to the other state. So basically, what that allows us to do is then, let's say, okay, when we need to search on the new state, the new value, the new data that's in that particular the variable, we can reference the ID, and then every time we want to, we can look up that ID, and then that update on the other state variable gets updated every time. So again, really keeping them connected in a way that we don't have to manually update them. And the last thing we do when we're talking about state structure is nesting. Nesting is a problem when we wanted to nest different states within one variable or state variable. So we have this, let's say this child, in the example here, we have this, we want to have like an object that has like different, the planet, countries, and then like different continents, and then different states or different countries within the continent. So you have ID 1 is Earth, ID 2 is Africa, ID 3 is Botswana. But let's say, oh, we want to delete one of these things, or we want to update it. Then we always have to make sure that to update 1, 2, and 3, which is really tricky to do. Again, updating them is where the problem of the bugs comes in. So instead, we can make whole entries or whole objects here where we also continue to have child IDs with them. So then we can update, if we update the ID by 1, the object, then we know that the child IDs can also or should also be updated. So again, cleaning up this experience from a nesting perspective. Always would say, like, avoiding doing too heavy nesting as well, because then that will be really tricky. So the next concept, and ping if you want to have any questions around state as well, is that this lifting state. Sounds heavy, right? State is super important. It's got a lot of data, everything like that. Well, this idea of lifting state is around, again, how do we have components that, if we want them to change together, right? We actually do want them to change together, and we want them to stay changed together. Like we update here, let's say the voting count, and as well as the voting history also for the user. These also are connected in some type of way. So there's this thing where we can basically, we traditionally did this, like we passed the props, which is the data from a parent to one component, and the initial kind of idea is that, okay, we'll just keep continuing to pass props to the other components, but that becomes really tricky again when things get more complex. So instead of like updating the state of each of these components every time, let's say somebody votes, we can also then update the two states. Instead of updating the two states, we can pass the props from one parent, and we can pass them as props instead, and then also have the parent use the state. So let's say voting count, for example. So new vote, we're setting the new voting count, and then we pass the props to know that this user has voted, and that you need to also add a new vote to the additional count in the component for counting all the votes. And this is a much better way to do that, right? So we have this function, which is the canvas, and then we're passing in isDrawing. So isDrawing is coming from, let's say, the parent component. Let's say, in this case, app.js. And then if we had another component that wanted to save this, then we also can pass isDrawing as a prop to the other component there. And then let's say we wanted to pass this in. So canvas, we can have the title. So you're making the Mona Lisa, for example. And then isDrawing, which is the state that's pointing to the parent. Then we can also put this in isTrue as well. So the next, and this keeps like our single source of truth. So that keeps us managing it in a very good, succinct way. And then we can then do drawing in the parent component, drawing index, set drawing index, and like we can set that in there. So the parent component acts as the source of truth and passes those connected in there, each component. And the next thing is keeping and resetting state, which is a really important part, again, when we're talking about updating things. And I'm going to quiz everybody here. So if I had this code, counter. So basically this counter. So let's say we just have this button that counts 1, 2, 3 every time we click on something. And I have it twice. So now the question to the audience is, will they do the same thing? Will they work the same way? And what I mean by that is if I click the button counter once, will it update the other counter? So I have 2 counters. Again, I click the button, it adds 1. And I've rendered or showing 2 counters here. The same code, right? It's the same component. Will this be showing the same thing? Will if I click the button once, add, will it update 1 on the other counter as well? Or will it be something different? That's the question. And I should get some thinking music. This do. So again, 2 components. Yeah. Same name, same thing. We got to click the button. And does it change? Does it update the other component? That's my question to you all. Right? And I'm gonna talk about this first. So state is for each component. And React uses this concept called the UI tree. Trees are a big thing in programming. So if you're new to programming, get comfortable with talking about trees. So state, that it's a very local thing to each component, and React knows which components we're talking about based on where they sit in the tree. So I've taken this image from the docs, which I think is really good. Basically, if you have these locations, let's say component A, B, and C. So A is the parent component, B and C are child components to that. And then it loads it into the DOM, which is basically how we load the pages. It knows based on its location which component is which. And like I said, then the state of each component is local to that component, meaning that it knows by location which component is what and which state is then connected to that component. So the question, let's see, is then if they are going to be the same. So let's say, yes, both work the same and have the same, they have to have the same state, right? And I guess, no crypto guessing out here, they should keep their own state. And Jim says, yes, they are the same. So if again, I click the button, they're going to update because it's the same component, same code, whatnot. And the true answer is, as crypto has guessed, but guessed correctly, they will not be the same. So if I actually I should have showed an example as a wow, prove it, Corey. But these won't actually be the same state. If I bring this code, basically because in each of these components is its own local state, and the way this location is, so this counter and this counter are in 2 different locations in regards to React. So they have their own state where they're managed. So if I click on let's see if I can find this real quick. So, because I don't like to say things and not prove it. Let me see if I can find it. Where are we? So this is the React docs. Again, a great resource, and I think there's a really good example of this. Where are we? Oh, restoring. Yeah. So I'm gonna prove this. So we have this code that I just showed you, right? Counters to counters. So I click on that. No, doesn't update this one. Nope, doesn't update. So no updating. They're all separate. They're both separate states. Good thing to know, right? If you want to reload certain things or show things twice. So it's the same component, but it has independent state. I don't want to be political here, but you could probably make some political examples, right? So state that what that means is state lives and it dies with the component. So every time that you show a component, or you want to remove a component, or you want to move a component on this tree, for example, the state then lives and dies. It changes. It goes away, or it resets itself, which can be used for your advantage again if you want to reset some things. So if you want to keep the same state, if you want to make sure that these are connected, you actually need to render them in the same position or connect them in some type of way. So in this example, what I pulled out is that we have this is fancy or is not is fancy. And basically what this allows is we're going to then also show like we're gonna make some design here. So we're actually gonna change the component a bit. But basically, this is in the div. It's in the same location. And we have this counter, and we basically are just updating the state. So if this is true or false, and then we're updating those based on what the user has clicked on. So this is in the same location, so it may look like we have two different components, or it would work the same way, but they're technically in the same location in terms of what we're showing on the page. And then we could even do certain things like this, right? So let's say we did want them to be separate. We can put them in like, okay, div counter. So this is a div inside of this div, this counter. But then like if we do want to say we want to reset this as well, section, we can put this in a section, and this actually will be two locations in the tree. And these will then also be separate. So if we change this to is fancy to true, so we have some design, that will restart the counter or reset the counter. So that might be something we want to do. And again, that's kind of using it to our advantage, but something to be mindful of when you're working with different components. So the next two concepts are going to be a little bit more, they're unique to React, and well, not unique to React, but unique as far as now we're going to actually import some other things into React that we haven't actually done as well. Okay, so humble. I said guess, but I actually knew Crypto Unity. I love it. So reducers and context. So reducers are really important when we have like one component, but many updates that we need to do. And we actually need to do this with many other event handlers as well. So I have this recipe manager, for example, this app here. So let's say we have this example where we have banana curry pizza, which is a Swedish pizza type that I understand many parts of the world don't have or think is disgusting, which is okay. We're happy to have banana curry pizza to ourselves. But let's say we have this thing where we want to, add an ingredient. We can add it. We can like check it off when maybe we've bought it or we've added it to the actual pizza. Then we can edit and delete them as well. Let's say, oh, I actually didn't want a banana. I meant pineapple, which maybe pineapple curry pizza might be a good idea. And then we can also delete them, right, if we don't want them as well. So we have a couple of things. So we have these components and we have different handlers and things going on here that we want to then, you might need to manage all these sorts of things. So we have this event handler, each event handler. So we can maybe want to add, edit, delete, and then these all will have to then update the state, right? So if we add something, then we do set ingredients, and then now we need to add a new ingredient to the array, for example. So instead of setting the state of all of these things every time, we can use this basically dispatching actions as well, and that's all between using these what we call again at the very type. Reducers. So what we're going to do here is instead of using state, we can do this dispatch, which is taking this like a specific component. Then we can do a type, which is something basically like what happened. What have we done? Have we added something? Have we deleted something? And then we have these other fields that can go here where we can then based on whatever we want the action to be taking place. So we basically then build this reducer function, which is like, okay, we're going to handle add ingredients. We're going to pass in the ingredient ID. And then dispatch is basically, again, the action. So let's say the type is added. And then we want to add the ID, so this ingredient ID. Right? So then we're going to actually import the use reducer, which is part of the React language or library there. So again, something we're adding instead of just doing use state. And then we're going to make a reducer. So instead of doing use state, we have this const ingredients, set ingredients, and then use reducer, ingredients reducer, which is the reducer, again, the thing that's going to handle these dispatching of actions. And then the initial is like similar to what we did with state, but we actually define it here, the initial ingredients. And then we have this ingredient, just a function reducer that we have, which is like your reducer, for example, and then the state and the action. So in this case, we want to do ingredients reducer, the task and then the action or the ingredients if we want. And then we're going to say like if the action type is added, then what are we going to do? We're going to return. We're going to do this. We're going to copy the array, and then we're going to add the new array, the new ingredient that we want here, right? The action, the ID, the text, for example, and then let's say button equals to false, being basically, let's say we haven't added or we haven't bought something. So this kind of consolidates all of those things. So this reducer, we can also do action type deleted, action type edited, and then have something that where we actually, the code to actually do those things all in one reducer instead of having event handlers call and change each state every time something happens there. And yeah, Crypto Uni, not a fan of the pizza curry. Let me know in the chat if you've eaten any banana pizza, banana curry pizza, anything like that. Because then you've obviously been in Sweden at least once, I would think. So the last kind of idea or concept of around state is context. And again, this is another thing that we add. So in context, sometimes we have like many components that are nested in one another, and most of the time we've just passed data to via props, right? But let's say we have multiple components, so a component within a component, and that's if we needed to like pass data from the parent component to like a child component that's inside another component, we'd have to pass it through all of the components just to get to that one component. But even if that middle component doesn't need the data or is not interested in it, we still have to pass it through. And that's really kind of annoying. So we have this concept called prop drilling. So, we had this idea earlier called lifting state. So let's say instead of if we had state that's shared between two, we basically just let the parent component manage that state, and then we passed that state through props. In the cases of prop drilling, and the docs do, they call this teleporting. Basically, instead we have we have this lifting state here, for example. But let's say, okay, we have this one component this parent component doesn't need this component, this props, this data, but we do have one component here that does, and maybe the child components of even that child component needs to do to handle that. So we have use context, which allows us to pass information basically to passing information to components that need it the most. So instead, right, we can use context to close children. Again, this is taken from the docs. Then we also can use context for distant children. So distant children being components that are not next to one another, basically on this chain or this tree of components. So I have this context. So again, I'm importing create context. And then I'm going to do export context ingredients context. So that's how we define that. And then we can do an initial context or create a context with this banana curry flowers. These are the ingredients for the pizza. And then next we're going to then need to actually then when we want to import them into the components that it uses, we then need to import the ingredients context. So this guy there from ingredients context JS. So this is the component there. And then we want to then use that context. So we just go const ingredients, and then we're going to use context and passing in the ingredients context that we want. So again, that passing in the recipe, the initial ingredients, all the way to let's say a new component that may be further away on the tree than this component. And then we also then need to pass that within. So let's say we have the ingredients, which is going to be then the kebab sauce, flour. So similar like how we would do it in props inside that component that we want it to be used. And then lastly, what's even more important is that when we need to pass that children from the parent, we also need to do this ingredients context, which we have then this context provider. So that's just taking the ingredients from the parent component that for this child, for example, and passing it to the child component. So again, we don't have to pass in the state, but we pass in the context, and then that's how it's being used. So that was the main ideas around handling inputs, React State, and very deep diving. And again, this is your first time seeing React State. I admit this is probably a lot of information, but just to show you, this is quite a broad or quite deep area of regards to React development, and an area that you definitely should focus on in your React learning journey. But I did want to briefly comment because yes, this is hard, and there's a lot of tools. When anything is hard for developers, they try to make tools to make it easier. So they have these things called state management libraries. There's a few popular ones, and again, I'm kind of running out of time, but I'm not going to go into deep anyways here. Um, we have one called the Redux, which was the first state management library, and it kind of introduced the idea that like maybe since we're building more complex applications, we need a good way to manage the state. It was created by this guy named Dan Amberoff. He is maybe when you're first learning React confused with creating React itself, but that's definitely not what he has done. He was the co-author of Redux, and he is part of the core React team, I think, still currently. But he didn't make React, but he did make Redux, and that got him into the core React team after presenting that. And the core idea behind Redux, now that I've made the screen smaller, is that there's this global state that gets managed by all of the components, and they basically subscribe to, and then you can manage that much easier. So there is things like actions, reducers, and then they have this main global state that if like one component is subscribed or a part of, so this main big state here, then the child components also have access to that. So instead of doing that each and component, we have one global state where we can then go ahead and manage and understand. So again, keeps this much easier to manage because then you don't have to worry about what the state is in each of these components, for example. There's another one called hook state that's growing in popularity as well. Some of the different differences between that is as a first class in TypeScript. So if you're a TypeScript developer or primarily working in TypeScript, it's probably worth looking at. It has also different state versions. So there's a local state, global state, nested scope, and asynchronous state. So different ways you can manage your states in different components. And again, one of the big things that like a lot of libraries like to advertise is like how close they are to the native language. And hook state is actually based on the native React hook. So like things like context that we mentioned as well. These are all native React hooks. And React state is also a React hook. So this is all built and based on those sorts of things. So maybe from a learner's perspective, maybe it's going to be more similar to what you get used to when you're working with the native React hooks. And the last one I want to talk about is Recoil. Recoil is actually made by the Facebook team or Meta team. And as you may or may not know, Meta is also owning or has created React in general. So that's why a lot of people are starting to move to Recoil as well, because they have the backing of basically the React or the Meta team. It's not necessarily, I don't think it's the same developers working on this, but obviously they probably work together in some regards. And the big idea is here is that there's things called atoms and selectors in your components. And basically atoms or wherever shared state units are basically, you can see here like this, like these are components. So these components share a state. So that's an atom. And these three components share a state. So that's an atom. And then selectors basically are functions that get values from these atoms. So this like connection here as a selector. So maybe there's a shared state or things like that where there'd be a function here that gets this data and then passes the component. So that's Recoil. Again, I don't advertise or say you should do one or the other. Redux was the first, so that's naturally has a bigger community than the other ones. But these are all, again, worth looking at and seeing which one's your preference or what project you're trying to work on as well. So that was React State. I mean, what's the difference between JavaScript and TypeScript? That's a big question to answer in one thing. But yeah, TypeScript is a language built upon JavaScript that allows you to manage your types in better ways and compile your code. So I guess the simple way is you have different types, different data types and things like that you write in JavaScript. And basically TypeScript allows you to declare these types and makes that working with JavaScript smoother. Many people have found where you can compile your code or transpile your code into JavaScript and then know where the errors are before you actually get to runtime. So that's a simple way. I would definitely look, if you feel comfortable with your JavaScript skills, to definitely look into that. I've done some intro to TypeScript series here on this channel as well. Maybe I'll drop that in the link. But thank you everybody for joining. I always say you could be anywhere on the internet right now, but you chose to spend at least an hour with me, which is truly grateful for. And like I said, all of the links and all of the resources that you could find that I sent here, like all of the different React management tool libraries out there, you'll find links there. You'll find links to the Cloud Skills Challenge. You have basically 2 weeks to do it. So it's all very possible to do, as well as the learners document matchmaking. So finding other people who are learning, maybe learning TypeScript, maybe learning wanting to go deep on React State. All of these are what everyone's been joining to learn on. But yeah, truly appreciate it. See you in, sadly, going to be the last week together. Next week, we're going to talk about making all this stuff really pretty with Tailwind CSS and how that actually works with React as well, because there's a little, little specifics as well. Cool. Thanks, everyone.